Hello everyone, this is Kaizouwar here, and this video will be about the Final Fantasy 25th anniversary announcement and my thoughts on it. I was going to make this video right after the announcement, but I didn't have time to, and stuff happens. So I'm making it now. Anyway, let's talk about some Final Fantasy today, because again, I love the series. I've been a big Final Fantasy fan for many years now, and Final Fantasy VII is a very special game to me. Now, I want to talk a little bit about my history of Final Fantasy VII. Obviously, I played it back in the day when I was younger. I didn't play it when it came out because I was literally born when Final Fantasy VII came out. So, yeah, I couldn't exactly, play it then, but I did play it later down the line. Loved it. I actually played it like a couple of weeks ago again, just to refresh my mind on a bunch of things. Loved replaying it again, and I also played every game in the series: Crisis Core, Dirge. I also watched Advent Children as well. I recently played Remake. Played Remake like a year ago, so I finished that a year ago. Also played it again recently to refresh my mind. Still in touch before Crisis, and I don't think anyone has ever done that. And I'm pretty hyped for the upcoming releases for several games like ARCSYS and Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2, and more games I want to talk about. I don't want to talk about them just now. Let's start this whole thing in order. So the first announcement was ARCSYS. Now, we remember a while ago that ARCSYS was supposed to be turn-based gacha versions of Final Fantasy VII, the OG Final Fantasy VII, Crisis Core, Before Crisis, and for the first time ever, you could play Advent Children, presumably, and we get to play Cerberus. Now, I didn't know what to think of ARCSYS back then. I thought it would be a cool idea. I was like, oh yeah, that's cool. They're remaking these games, but it's weird that they're remaking these games. Like, how would this work? Because ARCSYS is a mobile game, right? And a mobile game is going to be a mobile game released in parts, and if it's essentially kind of like I'm not gonna call it the Pocket Edition version of how Final Fantasy 15 had the Pocket Edition of itself. They released it on every console. I don't know if they're going about it like this, but what I've seen, they had like a bunch of different moments of it, and you also see stuff in battle where you can select prompts. The characters look like they're from they're models from the remake. So I don't know how deep this goes. I don't know how deep ARCSYS will go in regards to the game, because I hope it's not like one of that kind of thing where it's like you're locked from the story if you just don't pay or anything like that. That's one thing I don't want ARCSYS to be, because it's going to be a gacha, but I don't want it to be something like where you can't pay or anything like that. Because the game's going to be presumably free to play, but I don't want story progression locked behind money. I mean, I can understand buying the individual games, we'll release Final Fantasy VII and Crisis Core for you to play, and then you guys could pay for Before Crisis or Advent Children or just Cerberus, that kind of thing. I don't know, but if they're releasing this stuff episodically, I really hope that the money is just other things. But I guess they're not going to make any money if they do that sort of thing. I don't know. That's why I'm really mixed on ARCSYS. I like the idea, but I have no idea how they're going to go about it, and I have no idea how deep it goes. I don't see them remake Final Fantasy VII is a big game. It is a huge game. I remember playing it recently. It took me about 40 hours to beat, right? So I don't know how they're going to do all in the mobile style, remaking it. I don't know. I don't know. They call it another possibility of a remake. So I guess I'm gonna assume that they remade the entire games just in this style, and that's what kind of confuses me a bit. It depends on how deep they go with it, right? But there will be a closed beta this year for iOS and Android, and I honestly wish it was for consoles as well, because I don't know. I mean, there are mobile games for consoles, there's Bleach Brave Souls that just recently got into PlayStation 4. You can play it there. There's also a bunch of other mobile games that have been recently on consoles, but we just gotta wait and see. I don't know how ARCSYS is gonna come out, but we assume that they've been showing a lot of footage from 7 and Crisis Core, so we can only assume that they're gonna be the first ones to come out. So I don't know. Maybe this is if you see how it plays and see how it is a test run. But I don't know. ARCSYS I've been mixed on it because I have no idea what to feel about it, and I have no idea how they're gonna go about it. Because if they're remaking Final Fantasy VII and Crisis Core, they're essentially just giving you those games for free. In a way, and I don't see that happening. There has to be some catch to it, but yeah, that's my thoughts on ARCSYS right there. I don't know what to think. The next point I have to talk about is the First Soldier. Now, the First Soldier, I honestly, okay, before the game even came out, and they released the names Ever Crisis and the First Soldier, I originally thought it was going to be about Sephiroth. Sephiroth is the first soldier in the program, so I just figured, okay, maybe it's gonna be like a little side story about him. You know, maybe a little side story, like, or DLC for Remake. I don't know. That was my original thought. But no, it's a battle royale game with microtransactions. And I don't know what, I still don't know I honestly don't care about the First Soldier. Like, funny enough, I was watching other people's reactions and they just skip right over the First Soldier shit. I honestly do not care about the First Soldier because, I mean, honestly, I feel like it could have been something else way different. I don't know why they chose a battle royale. They chose the lamest idea they could have chosen for Final Fantasy VII. Like, yeah, I guess the idea of a battle royale game set in, not the universe of Final Fantasy VII, but, like, you know, has Final Fantasy VII aspects to it. I think that's a cool idea, but at the same time, like, I honestly don't care about this. Like, you know, it's just whatever, you know? Like, I mean, one thing I did like about the idea for First Soldier is that they have these little collabs where you can get skins of the Polygon FF7 characters. I think that's really cool because I like that idea. I think that idea is pretty cool. But with regards to the First Soldier, I could care less about it. Honestly, like, I don't know why. You know, like, this is like one of the most unnecessary things Final Fantasy VII ever had. And I've seen Dirge of Cerberus. I've seen Avid Children. At least for as weird and bad as Dirge is, and as weird and as whatever Advent Children is, at least it had purpose. I don't see what purpose the First Soldier has outside of money. So, you know, yeah, I don't like the First Soldier. I haven't played it, but I really don't care. I just don't care. Let's move it. We're moving on. And now we're on to a big one. Crisis Core Final Fantasy Reunion. Okay, before I even start talking about this, I swear to God, I thought Reunion was going to be one of the subtitles for the next remake parts. So I guess Crisis Core stole it first. Damn it. Anyway, I was not expecting them to ever remake Crisis Core. Now, I thought this game would have had a remastered by now. You know, they were going to remaster it, whatever. But ever since Remake came out, I was thinking, maybe a remake would make sense. But then again, I feel like, you know, people don't know. People who are coming to Remake for the first time don't know shit about Zack. I mean, they've probably seen him, they probably heard of him, but they don't know anything about if they haven't played Crisis Core, right? And if they haven't played the original FF7, they know even less about him there, right? So I figured, okay, maybe remastering Crisis Core would have been the best idea. To, you know, it'll be on modern console so people can play it, so they'll know about Zack and, you know, lead into the next part of Remake and beyond. But no, they actually went the extra mile and remade the whole thing. Now, the one thing that's going to is weird about them remaking Crisis Core is the fact that it's probably going to tie into the Remake project, right? Because there's no way that they would have completely remade Crisis Core from the ground up without having it tied to the Remake project. So that means there's probably going to be some story deviations in Crisis Core, right? Because my first guess is that they're going to get Crisis Core, and you know how Zack survives at the end of Remake? Well, they're going to probably do that ending, right? Where Zack survives at the end of Remake, and then put that into Crisis Core Reunion, and then lead on from there. That is my only way of seeing that, and I'm kind of mixed about that. Now, if they keep Crisis Core 1-to-1, that's great, but Square is not going to make this Crisis Core Remake 1-to-1. They are not. It will be different in subtle places, and it will. Or, you know, if it's not, I'll swear to God, I'll be surprised, because that means Square just couldn't, they held back and left their complete remake. But I don't see the story from the original Crisis Core staying the same. I don't see it at all. They're going to change some stuff. Maybe it's minor, maybe major. There's some things that are left unsaid in Crisis Core, and there's some things that definitely need to be expanded upon or definitely changed. But I don't see Crisis Core Reunion not tying to the Remake project somehow. I don't see it not being able to tie into this project. It's probably part of the compilation. It's like, I don't know. But my guess is that it will tie into like the Remake project. Possibly Rebirth and maybe even Remake and explain some stuff about Zack, what his deal is there. Because if Crisis Core Reunion is coming out this winter, far earlier than the next game in the Remake project, right? So it's coming out way earlier. So my only guess, and this is an assumption here. This is a guess, speculation. I'm speculating that this game will be the bridge from Final Fantasy VII Remake into the next Remake game. So when you play Crisis Core Reunion, you'll know more about Zack. There will be some story deviations, and that will lead into the next Remake game. I'm not saying its name yet because I want to get to it first. I want to get to it after that. So that's my guess. But it's nice to see that Crisis Core is getting a remake of all things. You know, it's not just a remaster; it's a full-on remake. It's not going to be limited by the games. It's not going to be limited by the PSP's hardware anymore. So we won't have to deal with activating combat mode and random enemy spawns everywhere when you walk into an area where they shouldn't be at. They're probably going to be on the overworld like every other Final Fantasy game has. So that's really, really nice to see. And it's nice to see that this game won't be hindered by the PSP's hardware no more. I'm happy about that. I hope they add some more bosses, some more story stuff that, you know, I hope they add more to it to make it feel more natural. Because when you think about Crisis Core, like, I think out of Advent Children and Dirge and, like, you know, other games in the compilation of Final Fantasy VII, I feel like Crisis Core is the one that leads into it more naturally, even though it has its fair share of issues. The Crisis Core is not a perfect game. It has a lot of issues. I hope they fix with Crisis Core Reunion, but I don't think so. Like, I don't think they're going to fix those things. I think they're just going. That's like baked into the game, but we never know until it happens. So, you know, it will come out until winter, so we won't know until then. So just gotta literally wait till then. Anyway, also, when I heard the trailer, it felt weird to hear the trailer because when I heard some of the new voices, right, I could definitely tell Angel's the same voice he was back then. I can't remember like his voice actor's name, but it did sound like him from Crisis Core originally, right? And Zack is obviously played by a different voice actor. And I assume that it's still the same dude from Remake, right? He sounds. First of all, he sounds way better. He sounds more like Zack now, which I appreciate. But the thing is that weirds me out is that if they're going to replace some voice actors, Sephiroth's voice actor is still George Newbern from when he was before Remake, and like in every game before Remake and Kingdom Hearts. Well, Kingdom Hearts 2, because he wasn't in Kingdom Hearts 1. Ew. That Kingdom Hearts 1 was that dude from NSYNC. But anyway. So I'm confused because I heard some of Zack's old voice lines for Rick Gomez in the trailer. Unless Caleb Pierce sounds that good, I don't think Sephiroth's coming back as George Newbern. I think they're going to replace him. So I don't know if this was like early footage, you know, like because they didn't dub the game fully, so they just had to add whatever they could add. I don't know, but yeah, that's George Newbern as Sephiroth. So that's still him from before Remake, right? Zack's definitely different, Caleb Pierce, but I did hear Rick Gomez in some of these lines, just a couple, but not too many, but like just a couple, and I'm just so confused. I'm like, wait, I don't get it. Like, what's happening here? You know, why they're mixing up voice lines? And I've assumed maybe it's just really early. We'll just have to wait till more footage comes out. So, you know, I'm not going to make a big deal out of that. But I'm personally happy for Crisis Core Reunion, and we already know it's probably going to be the in-between between Remake and the next game. We already know that, so we might as well just sit back and embrace for that. And my last topic for today is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, the second game in the 3-part Remake project. And I have no idea what to feel. First of all, I like that they're starting off with a flashback with Cloud and Nibelheim. And, you know, obviously Sephiroth with him. So I wonder how that's going to play out, you know, because you could play as Cloud and then, you know, have Sephiroth on your team during the flashback sequence. So I want to know if you're able to switch to Sephiroth during the battle, because, you know, it gives you a little taste of Sephiroth, and I actually want that, you know. Like, I think that would be pretty cool to let you at least play as Sephiroth during that. I think that would be pretty cool. Just to watch him mow down enemies and just beat the shit out of people. I think that would be pretty funny. There isn't much to say about this because first of all, it's so short and a lot of things are up in the air. But I like the idea they're starting with the flashback. So they're already in calm because this is where the flashback sequence happens. They're already calm because, like, at the end of Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade, when they showed the gang walking away from Midgar, Tifa mentions that they're going to calm. They go to calm, and I guess this is what happens with the flashback sequence. So they're already near calm at the end of Remake Intergrade, so that's something. Now, there isn't much to say about this, because, like, you know, Sephiroth has a new end game now, and Cloud did mention that he wants to rule the world with Jenova at his side, and then, like, Cloud mentions something about Tifa, like, dying. Now I know it's like where where Sephiroth killed her father, and she was going pick up his Masamune and go after him herself, and first, and also she got struck herself. She got she got she got struck by Sephiroth, and I want. And like this is weird that they chose that to bring up, right? And also that was like a big thing because that ties into I guess that ties into the flashback because that did happen in there, the flashback sequence. So like it's funny they chose to do that then, right? And they also transitioned to a scene where Cloud is walking with Zack. Well, Zack was walking with Cloud, and they reach Midgar. But the thing about Midgar is that the plate had already fallen by then, right? Because, like, I remember when at the end of Remake Integrate, where Zack enters the church, and he sees a bunch of people at the church crying, and I could only assume those people, and this is, again, speculation, but I can only assume those people were there because the plate fell, right? They lost their homes because the plate had already fallen during the events of Final Fantasy VII, right? So, like, and Aerith wasn't in the church because she was already off with the gang by then, right? So, it's pretty hinted that Zack crossed over into, like, he either crossed over to the end of Final Fantasy, like because he survived, right? So it's implied that he crossed over into either OG Final Fantasy, and he lived from Crisis Core, or he's in the Remake timeline, or at least after the events of Remake, or after the events of Final Fantasy, or no, after the events of Final Fantasy, after the events of FF7, where like all the events have happened already, but Zack's like literally too late for everything, right? Don't know, but I do like the idea of like they're laying on the fact that Zack is somewhere, somewhere that's not where he's supposed to be, and I think that's very interesting because like that could probably give rise to Zack gameplay segments, which I'm all cool for. Maybe you have him walk around Midgar because or have him walk around like the overworld or something. I think that'd be pretty interesting because like Zack, like Cloud and Aerith mentioned that Zack has been missing. Cloud has mentioned that Zack has been missing for like 5 years at this point. I'm like, what? Then where does Zack go? Did he cross over into the wrong place? I don't know. But I think this is pretty interesting. I like that they're leaning on this. Aerith did say, it's like, okay, look, don't focus on the past. Focus on the future, man. Like, don't focus on the past, but all the events that we've done in the past, they're set in stone. We've already done that. Don't think about the past, think about the future, because, even if the future has been written, it can't be changed. And I think that's a really interesting way of looking at it. Like, this is like the rebirth of Final Fantasy VII. And they actually, I like how the idea of, like, people thought this was going to be a remake. And then, like, the idea of the word remake was actually, no, we're not remaking the game. We're remaking Final Fantasy VII as a whole. It's a remade version of Final Fantasy VII in a new way. And they got Rebirth. And there's the final part, which they confirm it's in 3 parts. And it's going to be also another re. So my original thing is that I thought it was going to be called Reunion, Final Fantasy VII Reunion, because it would make so much sense with the whole, obviously the Reunion dudes are supposed to come together. And they were supposed to enact, get revive Genova, then get Sephiroth here, then Meteor, then open the launch, all that stuff, all the events of 7, right? And I figured the reunion was going to happen, here, or like, in the final part, that's probably reunion. But since Crisis Core took that first, I figured, okay, what if it's called Return or whatever? Like, it's again, it's too early because there's not that much trailers out there yet. But I'm excited. I'm really excited to see the next game, and I'm so excited that it's going to come so early. It's going to come in next winter. That is very early compared to certain other games that we had to deal with Square. And a lot of people like to joke, been 20 years for seen this now. It's only been, let's see, Remake came out in 2022, I think. Sorry, 2020. So it's only been it'll only be 3 years, which is actually pretty amazing. Because next year will be 2023, so it'll only be 3 years. I think that's very cool. Yeah, I think that's pretty awesome. It's nice to see this. I'm actually really happy to see the next part of Rebirth announced so soon. I'm really happy about that. And I'm still trying to figure out what else I have to say. I think that's everything. I'm excited for Crisis Core being remade. I'm about to say remastered again. I'm happy that it's being remastered. I'm happy to see that Rebirth is finally announced. It's nice to see Ever Crisis, get some get some signs of life, because we had no idea before what the hell to even think of Ever Crisis. I'm still a little mixed on it, but whatever. I'm still a little mixed on it, but I'm still excited. I'm still excited to see what EverCrest is going to be, especially having a playable Advent Children and an actual playable version of Dirge of Cerberus. I mean, playable. Not like you could play Dirge of Cerberus, but I mean, like, the game's garbage. You know, play it, you know, playable. But yeah, EverCrest is going to be super interesting, and I could care less about the first Soldier, but I mean, it's nice to see that, you know, Cloud and Genesis are getting in the game with their little chibi avatar. Sorry, chibi avatar, my bad. Polygon models, which I find really hilarious. So yeah, that's everything I really want to talk about in this video. Super long video. Sorry about that. And I am out, guys. I will see y'all next time. I hope you guys have a great day. I'm just gonna wait here for more Final Fantasy VII news. Peace out, everyone, and I hope everyone enjoys themselves.